Well, tell me a bit about your piece. What's the poem?
Yeah, so the piece for the Hereford Chamber Choir, Dymock Poets. I read a biography of Edward Thomas a few years ago and got really captured by the tragedy of his story. And so I straight away thought, right, I'll actually look at everyone. And then I got a particular leaning towards Edward Thomas. So then I found a few poems
Mm.
by him, which I kind of wrote out I've got a notebook where I keep the kind of ongoing kind of work diary. So I wrote
Mm.
out several poems, which I was quite drawn to, and then found Rain, which just kind of hit the mark for me. So it's a really tragic poem written. It describes him at midnight in this hut in France in the First World War, and just the kind of relentless rain. And he's just thinking about all the people he knows who are dead, or the kind of inevitability of death. So yeah, it's just pretty intense. And I had a great time kind of just trying to give so I have it with piano. I think most people have done it as an a cappella setting,
Oh,
but
I
I
thought
did.
it was supposed to be a cappella live. I'm
I was
envious.
I was told organ and piano were
Oh,
available.
really? Okay.
Obviously, I got a different story, but hey, that's
I
how it
got
goes.
a difference, but that's okay.
So the piano part kind of clatters away in this rather kind of rainy, kind of stormy way, and with this kind of long line of the voice of the poet, basically.
Mm, mm, mm.
So that's it. One of the lines from the poem is "Blessed are the dead that the rain rains upon," and so that's set as a kind of prayer-like
Mhm, mhm.
chant, or chant-like kind of setting, and then it kind of moves in between these two forms of this kind of long lyrical line with the piano clashing away, and then into this kind of prayer-like thing.
Yes.
So and then it just kind of fades into nothing, like it just disappears into the night, kind of thing. So
Mm.
I really enjoyed writing it, and found it very moving. Found the whole process very moving. So I said to when I met up with Simon, the conductor, I uh, I was looking through the score just before we talked, and I was like going, "Oh God, it's so sad." I said, "I'm going to be probably once we've got all the kind of details right, I'm probably going to be weeping a lot during the performance of this." But in we had a rehearsal the other day. I wasn't weeping because we had lots to work on. So, but it's lovely to see it start to take shape and everything.
So that's already an interesting difference between us on a few fronts. Firstly, that your piece is with piano and mine is a cappella, but also that you live in very close proximity, so you've been able to work with the choir and the music director. And of course, I live in Norfolk, so I mean I haven't ventured. It's a long way to
Yeah.
your part. So I've been much more on my own. Um, but
Often
it's
the case, isn't it? I mean,
sorry.
that's often the case, isn't it? As a composer, you're on your own.
Yes, yes. So I didn't. I wasn't really sure of the standard of the choir. I tried to look online, but I couldn't find any recordings of them.
Mm.
So I tended to go for a more conservative setting because I conduct three choirs myself, and even the best choir can struggle, with new work. So I decided to go for a fairly conventional setting of The Guest by John Drinkwater. And I mean, I think I was approached not only because I was a composer, but also because John Drinkwater is my grandfather. And so I've been very involved with the Dymock Poets, and have made a song cycle called Songs of Immortality, which takes one poem from each poet. And I think you kind of encapsulated what these poets are about, which is really confronting death in their age span was a very young age, and that was because of the First World War. So rather like you, the poem I chose is called The Guest, and the first line is, "Sometimes I feel that death is very near." So it's quite an interesting poem. It's a sort of kind of speculative poem. Drinkwater says, "I wonder, will he come in that friendly way? When will he come, and will my soul be torn from me? Or will I, like a ship truly and trimly built, slip quietly to sea?" So it's quite enigmatic, which I like, because I like sort of mysterious poems. So it's been a really interesting journey, and just I think the setting I did, I hope reflects the sort of somewhat positive expectation of the inevitable, and I think that was very much Drinkwater's way. So in a sense, I'm reflecting his oeuvre, whereas the Thomas goes on a deeper level, I think.
Well, I think, and didn't they have quite different experiences? So Edward Thomas did go on to die in France. You know, he predicted that, but I think Drinkwater lived on, didn't he? Till
yes. So yes. Well, I mean, it was quite interesting. I mean, the was a variety of things happened. Of course, you know, some of them went back, like Robert Frost went back to America, so he elected not to fight. And my grandfather, John Drinkwater, didn't go to war, and that's a secret, hidden reason, which is that he was a conscientious objector.
Wow.
Yeah, but he didn't reveal that specifically. Only through his work. He wrote 2 plays, X equals nothing, which is about a German and a British soldier meeting on no man's land and the futility of war. So it is there embedded in his work. But I think at the time it was very shameful to, you know, and finally, he was quite a conservative person in other respects. So I think it was very difficult for him to actually articulate that. So, you know, and of course, Edward Thomas went to war, as did Rupert Brooke, and both of them were killed.
Yeah. It was interesting reading the biography, because Robert Frost, obviously they were all friends with each other, hence the group. And one of the plans they had was Robert Frost invited Edward Thomas to go with him to America with his family to set up a kind of farmstead there and live this kind of beautiful life. And then when war broke out, Edward Thomas made the decision to do his duty, and kind of so the biography is called All Roads Now Lead to France.
And you know, there's some people don't know it that frequently, that the Road Less Travelled, the famous poem by Frost, is actually is about Thomas having to make that decision, the 2 roads, and he really had great difficulty in making that decision.
And well, I think he was quite a tragic character anyway. I think he was a glass half empty kind of person, what I can gather. And I think and also his home life wasn't particularly easy, as far as I could also tell. So it's almost like this was a kind of inevitable end.
Yeah.
And also he felt kind of, and also he didn't have to sign up. It was a voluntary decision. So
was that because he was married?
I'm not sure what the reason was, but I know that it was a choice of his.
Because I mean, some people, I mean, if you were married, you could legitimately not.
Yeah, because he had young children.
Yeah. So that, but I mean, like in Rupert Brooke's case, he was actually failed at his medical, and then his publisher was Eddie Marsh, who was Churchill's secretary. And so he got a special dispensation from Churchill via Eddie Marsh to go to war. And he wasn't, you know the story perhaps of him. He was actually bitten by a mosquito on the island of Skyros.
Right, yeah.
And died of septicemia. So he never made it to Gallipoli. Yeah. But when he died, he was made kind of infamous by Churchill with the sonnet he wrote, "If I should die in this foreign land, think of me." And that was read 2 weeks later in Westminster Abbey on Easter Sunday. So that's how he sort of achieved immortality in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's the fascinating group
so,
of people. Tell me a bit more about your process then, Susie.
Well, I mean, my process is, well, I mean, always fundamentally at the bottom of whatever I do, I want to write music that the singers and the audience will enjoy. And when you're writing choral music, I find that more restrictive because one's got to do things like voice leading. And although one can use a sort of dissonance and everything, if you go too far, unless they're sort of like the BBC singers, it can be really challenging. So I to be honest, I didn't quite enjoy the process as much as I think you did, because I felt quite limited and cautious. So there's some typically, as in my music, there's some very unexpected harmonic kind of twists, but they're sort of set up enharmonically in a way that the choir doesn't have to work too hard to find the different notes. And yeah, I mean, it's trial and error until you actually hear the singers. You never quite know if it will work out.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I also was very conscious of the fact they're singing an entire program of new music, which is challenging for every performing group, and that's quite rare that you have a whole program of new pieces. So I was also feeling quite kind of concerned not to put too much pressure on the singers and the conductor to make it kind of learnable. So the way I've kind of solved that problem is to have actually quite a lot of unison singing, with occasionally maybe one part kind of breaking out of that. And so there are kind of little kind of devices that come repeat through the piece, and just to also kind of just repeat melodies, repeat gestures, so that the whole thing, as you rehearse the piece, it kind of rehearses itself. So that yes, the repetition helps to embed all the harmonic kind of language of the piece, and as you say, all the kind of voice leading, so the piano part guides the singers to a certain extent, although it's interesting that they started rehearsing without the piano, which I was thinking, oh, okay, that would make it quite a lot harder, because the piano supports the voice leading of the singers.
Oh, right. Wow.
And it was also interesting in rehearsal, there was one little kind of moment, solo moment, where I'd written it in a particular way that just was not working for the singer. It might have worked for another individual, I don't know, but we were able to just say, okay, change that staccato quaver, where you just kind of drop into a properly sung note, so that you can actually kind of find your voice onto it, and then you actually have a bit more time to really get the note to sound, because it was kind of coming out a bit kind of squawky, which wasn't quite what I was after.
Yeah,
squeaky.
But isn't that great? You know, and that is the wonderful benefit of working with living composers.
Is that we can everyone, it's like we can just change it.
We can just change it, exactly.
Easy.
And it's no skin off our back, I feel.
Oh no, I mean, and it's interesting how performers are quite, I don't know if you found this, but performers can be quite resistant to that. So I had one performer that I worked with a lot early on in my career, where they would say, I can do whatever you want. And I'd say, I want it to play well, you know. He said, "Oh no, you've written this and you want this." I was thinking,
Yeah.
well, kind of, but you know. And he said, "I'll make it work. I'll make it work." And so it was only later I realised that I should have kind of picked up on that. Said, "No, no, no. It's obviously awkward. Can you find a similar gesture that because for my work it's a lot about gesture. Sometimes the notes are important, but sometimes they're really not. It's more about the shape or the energy
Yes.
or
Yeah.
the kind of feel of it. And in terms of process, for me, it's all about actually feeling the emotion of, so in this context, the poem, the feeling that kind of sense of inevitable death, of, but also the beauty about it. It's like a kind of, he says, maybe, you know, I can't remember the exact words now, but, you know, maybe the solution is death, you know, that actually solves all my problems.
Wow.
So it and in fact that resonates with a conversation I had with my wonderful neighbour, who is going to be 99 in August, and she's been a great mentor to me, and a very interesting person. And she said a few years ago she just lost a friend. Obviously, being so old, she has to experience loss a lot. And she said, "Well, I kind of feel jealous of my friends who are dead." I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting thing to say." And she said, "Yeah, well, it's like they've been through it. They know what it is. You know, they've
That's really interesting.
got across to the other side." And I thought, wow, that's kind of slightly shifted my approach to this relationship with death and how we perceive it. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, it's like,
Yes. Well, I think there is a theme through it. I don't know what the other poems have been chosen, but that there is this theme of imminent death, which was, you know, very much a reality. I think also, you know, when I was composing the piece, because I'm a singer as well, and have sung a lot of other composers' music and commissioned other composers, and I really sort of want it to read well in a singer's throat, and that they're going to really enjoy it. And I think I'm getting better at it. Like in the Sea Requiem, which I just composed and we performed, that the singers all said they loved to sing it.
yeah.
And you know, the soloist too, that it really fitted in their throat, and it's quite tricky because there's quite a big difference between what I compositionally would like to do and what might actually really benefit the singer. So again, that's what I said I somewhat struggled with this piece, to try and find that balance in myself.
I think it's so important, isn't it, to not be so. When I was kind of training and being, you know, studying, we both did PhDs in composition. In that process, I was, you know, really experimenting with lots of very kind of lots of complexity and lots of kind of like risk taking and all that. But working more now, a lot of my work now is with choirs, although I write a lot of orchestral and instrumental music as well. But I'm just finding, you know, that we just need to, simplicity is our friend, and lyricism and beauty are the singer's friend. So that's the kind of territory I like to explore.
No, that's so I know that's really interesting. I'm talking about the PhD studying. I mean, I particularly benefited from a lot of extra supervisions with Howard Skempton, who sort of blessed me with the acceptance of simplicity could really be a powerful tool in one's kit as a composer. And isn't it interesting, you know, in a sense, as composers, that there is a lot of scope out there to create music for choirs and big choral works, because there's a whole network of people performing that, and so it's a very rich vein to develop, I think, in one's compositional oeuvre.
Is, and I think also a lot of choirs are interested in new voices, new sounds, and new poetry, new words that really fit our times. Yes, and that's something I'm exploring as well, of just like creating texts that really resonate with our our times now and the kind of issues that we're dealing with. So I'm just at the moment working on a requiem for refugees.
Oh
Which
yes, that's
we've done
right. Yes,
a
I
few
saw.
times.
Yeah.
So that is an example of music written for choirs where it is each movement has a very kind of clear identity with lots of repetition and very kind of clearly defined emotional landscapes.
Yeah.
And with kind of lots of different stylistic things, so that in terms of the audience, if there's one particular movement that you are not really connecting with, then that moves on, and then you get something quite different. So there's a lot of variety, and it was really fun actually kind of being kind of quite diverse into the different kind of
that's interesting, because I
languages.
must say that my C Requiem is my most consistent style large work that I've ever composed, and that I normally incorporate a eclectic range of styles, which I even have a methodology called quilting. But actually, funnily enough, in the C Requiem, because it was so very specifically centered on the sea, that I actually kept a rather narrow palette there. So, but I think it depends, what you're doing. Obviously, with refugees, it's a perfect solution, and also a wonderful practice to really open out your music. As you say, some people will really resonate with some aspects, and so I really look forward to hearing your piece. Is it coming off soon?
Yeah, so we're doing it locally in my village of Colwall in July, 2nd of July. It was also done in Coventry Cathedral last year, and it actually won an Ivors award.
Oh yes, well
so
done.
That's exciting. And just to clarify, the music's sung by the choir, so it's sung by ex cathedra in that case. And then there are just spaces for refugee performers or people with lived experience of finding refuge. So just literally there are a series of 5 spaces where they come and offer what they want to share. So I just write the music for them.
Yeah. No, I think that
very
sounds,
iterative.
that sounds amazing. Yes, and I think also for Composers Edition, we could definitely say that if you write a successful choral piece, you can have more than one performance. Like actually, the C Requiem's already been booked into a festival in Cromer for next autumn. And so these pieces can have life. I think I've written so many operas now, and it's quite difficult to get a repeat on your opera. Whereas a choral work really can, I think, gain purchase with different choral societies. So that's
working in a modular style as well, so that you can actually kind of unpick the bits of the piece that you want to sing, or put them all back together again.
Lovely. Yes.
Quite versatile in that you could actually just cherry pick a few bits.
Yes. That's excellent, isn't it? Yes.
Just because it's versatility. So you've got like 10 minutes, then you could have 10 minutes worth of those movements, and then, or if you've got the full kind of hour
or
and a half.
It could be in a concert of a choir doing a lot of different things, because choirs do.
That's worked. So people have done single movements or a little selection. As well.
Well, it's been fascinating. I'm going to have to finish there because I've got to go to my next class.
Yes, I've suddenly the time. Thanks so much, Susie. Looking forward to seeing you in Ledbury.
Yeah, I'll see you in. I'm going to stay the night, so maybe we can have a drink afterwards.
Hopefully, yes, that'd be lovely.
And I really look forward to hearing your piece.